Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. How often do we have to say it? If you want good, honest, no nonsense, no BS fights, evenly matched fights that produce good excitement, more often than not, all you've got to do is look at British title fights or area title fights or English title fights, because invariably you get two guys who are perfectly matched, both giving it all for some of these so-called lesser belts. And the British title, we all know about the history behind it. You give me that over one of these intercontinental belts any day of the week. And we had a great little flyweight scrap. This was I think it was in Rotherham. It was a card that was on Fight Zone. So it slipped under the radar for a lot of you, I'm sure, which is understandable. But it was between the champion Tommy Frank and Wales's Jay Harris. Tommy from Sheffield, so hence the, Rotherham, not too far from Sheffield, is it? Hence that venue. Tommy came in, 15 wins, 2 defeats, 1 draw. He only had 3 KOs in the win column, and he had a stoppage defeat when he retired after 8 rounds. I think he was injured. He had a shoulder injury, and that was back in 2020. And then that was against a guy called Rosendo Guarneros, I think his name was, Guarneros. And then he rematched the Mexican fellow Guarneros the following year and lost a split decision. And those was only 2 defeats. And that was for one of those IBF intercontinental, belts. So he was trying to get that world ranking, Tommy, but it didn't quite come off. So he went back down to British level, beat Matt Wendell, the punching poet they call Matt Wendell. Beat him over 12 points, unanimous decision. I watched that fight. It was a good fight. Matt Wendell had some guts. I think he's Commonwealth champ at the moment. I like Matt Wendell. Very honest. Another good little guy who's a very honest fighter. But Tommy beat him. That was in 2021. He rebuilt. He had a draw, actually, Tommy, against Craig Derbyshire. And that was a British title defence as a split draw. And Craig Derbyshire, if you look at his record, he's like 8-28-4 or something like that. It's a completely misleading record that Craig Derbyshire has, because he's been a journeyman taking fights. He can't get the work at flyweight, so he goes up and fights bantams and feathers. And he sort of worked his way into a title fight and ended up getting a draw against Tommy Frank. But against Jay Harris, Tommy Frank really was up against it, because Jay Harris has fought for a world title. He fought Julio Cesar Martinez back in 2020, and he was conclusively beaten. But he surprised a lot of people because he lasted the distance, and he did win about, maybe, I can't remember offhand, I give him 3 rounds. It was like a 9-3, 8-4 sort of fight. And then he came back from that. Jay Harris, I remember seeing Jay Harris actually fight Osomba. What was that, 2016, 2017, something like that? That was for the Commonwealth flyweight title. But after his title defeat, his world title defeat, the WBC World Flyweight title defeat in 2020, he moved back down to domestic level. He beat Marcel Braithwaite over 10 rounds, and then he bumped into Ricardo Sandoval, who chopped him up in 8 rounds. Stopped Harris with body punches. Sandoval, I think, has he fought for a world title? My memory's not as good as it was. I don't think he's fought for a world title, but I think he's what you'd call a world-class fighter, and he definitely chopped Jay down with the body punches. And then Jay dropped right down to light flyweight, took on Hector Flores, and got stopped in 6 again with the body punches. So he moved back up to flyweight for this fight. I think he had a little run around against a journeyman before. That's the only fight since those 2 back-to-back stoppage defeats. So he is rebuilding at domestic level, Jay Harris. And in the fight with Tommy, Tommy came out punching from the word go. Tommy's got no real power. He's only got three knockouts in the wins column. Jay, 19 wins coming in, 3 defeats, 10 wins by 19 by stoppage. So you'd think Jay had a bit more of a sharper punch, He's 32 now, by the way, Jay. So he's got to get his skates on. But Tommy, I think he's 29. He came out punching, just putting it straight on Jay from the word go. Looking at the body as well early on, because obviously with the 2 stoppage defeats to body punches, Tommy was thinking, I can do some work here and unsettle Jay. And in the first round, it was definitely Tommy's round. He sort of bullied Jay, he manhandled him, he landed some good punches. And Jay was maybe not taken by surprise, but he had to sort of find his feet. In the second round, he did so. He started to, he was a bit more, clearly he's got the better skills, by far the better skills than Tommy Frank, because when Jay's on it, he is world class, or at least fringe world class. And he started to thread the punches through nice and clean. Tommy was still moving forward, still putting the heat on him. But I gave the second round to Jay Harris. The third round, I think it was the third round, for the first time I thought Jay stung Tommy. And the thing about Tommy Frank was the pressure he was putting on Jay was throughout I'd say the first 7 rounds maybe, he was winning rounds through sheer attritional value, but it was taking so much out of him because he was having to work so hard to sort of contain Jay Harris's far superior technique and probably more hurtful punches. Because when Jay was working, when he had that little bit of space between them, he was threading those punches, those straight punches, and a good variety of them through very, very nicely. And Tommy Frank didn't really have an answer. I say he didn't have an answer. The only potential answer he had was to get close and kind of smother and stifle Jay and wrestle with him a little bit. And Jay Harris actually picked up a cut, I think it was over the right eye, in one of the middle rounds. I want to say the 5th, maybe the 5th. It was controlled well by the corner. It was bleeding, but it was generally controlled well. It wasn't an issue. But by round sort of 8, Tommy had used up so much energy trying to smother Jay's work and trying to just win rounds on it. Like I say, that attritional, come forward, constant pressure, that in a 12-round fight, down the stretch, the last third of the fight, the last 4 rounds, it was going to take its toll. And sure enough, Jay started to really land some sharp punches. He got his second wind because he was conserving lots of energy, whereas Tommy found it difficult to do that. If he was going to win rounds, he had to let it all hang out for over the 12-round duration. He wasn't able to do that. And in the 9th round, Jay Harris started to land some very, very powerful punches, some very sharp punches, and a good variety of them. He was going at Tommy's body, and it was both hands, good jabs, hooks, backhand was landing. And in the 9th round, Tommy was in some serious trouble. I mean, the last minute it's got to be one of the toughest of his whole career. And he looked there for the taking, and who was the referee? Was it Steve Gray? I think it was Steve Gray. He went over to the corner between the 9th and the 10th, looked at Tommy, and he might have said, you've got to show me something here because I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Well, Tommy came out and tried to put it on Jay again, but he just didn't have the energy. He was absolutely exhausted. And Jay sort of, 40 seconds in, took over, started to land really sharp punches again, a good variety of them. Tommy just didn't have the energy to get out of the way. He got trapped on the ropes and the towel came in. So Jay Harris in the 10th round scored a TKO and is the new British flyweight champ. And I think is his father Peter Harris? Because I remember him winning the British title. If it is Peter Harris, oh God almighty, late 80s, early 90s, I remember that. But yeah, so he's had the Commonwealth belt, Jay Harris. He's now got the British title. He's probably going to go but sort of bounce up the world level again, have another run at world level, possibly. Like I say, he's 32 now, so he's got to get his skates on, especially for the little guys. But he didn't look far removed from his prime, Jay Harris. It was a good performance, a very good performance, very controlled performance. And the way he sort of didn't lose heart despite the cut and despite the constant pressure, which is, as we always say, is mental as well as physical, he was able to control that aggression. I think this is a good experience for Jay Harris. And I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea if he went for the EBU title. I don't think Jay has held that EBU title. So if I was him, I'd go for that. But commiseration to Tommy Frank. You know, he lost his belt, but hey, he's been British champ. He can come again. He's 29. He's got time. Maybe if Jay vacates the belt, moves up, you know, to a higher level. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Jay Harris can build on this, because those 2 back-to-back stoppage defeats were very, very bad. Why he dropped down to light flyweight, I do not know. But this is a good win for Jay Harris. And like I say, this was on Fight Zone. They have the occasional very good domestic level card, and certainly this main event is worthy of your time if you can find it on YouTube or Daily Motion on one of those other channels. So if you did see the fight, let me know what you think. What do you think of Jay Harris? Do you think he can make another run at world level? What about Tommy Frank? Do you think he can come back? I wouldn't put it past either of them. It depends what they want to do, of course. Motivation, and it's the main thing. It's the main thing in anything in life, but certainly in boxing. You've got to really, really want to do it. And when you lose your belt, that's when you get tested. So Tommy's got to come back, just as Jay has done. Maybe drop down a level and come back. Leave your comments below if you've got any. Thanks for your time as always. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'd appreciate that. And of course, hit the like button. That always helps us out. And yeah, appreciate your time. Speak soon. Bye for now.